Hi, Howie.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Free Herbalism Project. I hope that's Valerian I Smell. I'm here in sunny Eugene, Oregon at the Mountain Rose Herbs headquarters, and I'm excited to be here with you all. Howie, where are you at?
I'm in rainy Joshua Tree.
I don't believe it.
No,
Usually you see it, yeah.
I don't believe it's sunny in Eugene.
Usually we're together in past Mountain Rose videos. We're usually in the Oregon Cascades together, but today we're in different parts of the country. But real glad that we could be with you here today and excited to present to you. I do have a couple slides, so I'm going to share my screen for a second and we can get started. So yeah, welcome everybody. Some of you may know or may not know that Howie and I used to teach together at the Columbines School of Botanical Studies. We taught together for over 20 years. And Howie still is the primary teacher at the Columbines School of Botanical Studies. And you can see, Howie, would you like to describe some of what goes on at the Columbine School of BS?
That's Botanical Studies, Steve.
That's right, Howie, that's right.
Well, at the Columbine School of Botanical Studies, we're running a variety of different classes, ranging from online, inexpensive, 3-hour Zoom classes for people who know absolutely nothing about plants or just know a little bit, ranging from there to a full three-year program. The gemstone of the school is still the spring apprenticeship program, where we take people out in the woods once a week and teach them how to identify, where we take you out in the woods once a week and teach you how to identify, locate medicinal and edible plants. Steve?
Essentially, you're living with the plants for a whole semester, going out every week and learning the plants that grow in the Western Cascades.
Stephen and I, for so many years that I can't remember which jokes are his and which jokes are mine. But
well, the funny ones are mine, Howie.
That's what I remember. Yeah, that's, if I can't tell, that's what I remember. If people laugh, it must be Stephen's. So we're going on our 38th year that I've taught this class, the 38th year that I've taught here at the Columbine School. But I do want to thank Mountain Rose Herbs for allowing us to do this wonderful Zoom meeting. Mountain Rose is just a tremendous help to herbalism in our country. The amount of energy and funds that they funnel into free clinics and herb schools and conferences is really helping invigorate and keep herbalism alive today.
The title of the class is a little tongue-in-cheek. When I first met Howie in the mid-90s, he actually had an email address, one of the few that had email addresses. And underneath his signature, he would sometimes put, "I hope that's Valerian I Smell." And so it's stuck all these years. And we can start getting into some content now. This is a photo of valerian root. This is Valeriana Officinalis. And this is roots that were harvested on the Columbines class in the summer that we harvest Valeriana roots. And these are actually washed roots. And we're not going to get too much into processing today, but I did want to give you this nice photo of some processed Valeriana Officinalis. Scratch and sniff's not implemented, Howie. So if it was, you would be able to get that nice musky smell that only fresh valerian provides. So I do have one more slide just because I'm going to do a little botany, just talk about the plant, just to put it in perspective. Me and Howie are both field botanists, so we focus heavily on proper identification. One of the first things you might notice is the leaves. The leaves are compound, meaning they have leaflets. And that picture on the left, that old drawing there, is actually Valeriana Officinalis, which is the European species, and has these defined broad leaflets. They're kind of uniform. It has the leaf on the left-hand side is a basal leaf, and then it also has leaves on the flowering stem, which we call cauline leaves. What's interesting about valerian, the native valerian, is that compared to the European, is that the leaves are really variable. You could look at one valerian species leaf and it's lobed or it's toothed. The margins are lobed or they're toothed. And then that same species is growing just a few yards away, could have entire lobes, and the leaves could look completely different. It's very difficult sometimes to identify valerian by its leaf, especially the native species. It has these beautiful flowers. This is a corum, is the inflorescence, and when it's in bud, the flowers are pink, and then as it matures, the flowers mature, they become more white. And then you can see that on that left-hand side, the stamens, the male parts are exerted. They stick out past the corolla or the flower. One other interesting point is that valerian is in the Valerianaceae, and that's closely related to the Asteraceae, which is the sunflower family. And if you think of like a dandelion, when it goes to fruit, it gets the kind of like that fuzz. You know, we make a wish on it and we blow the seeds and they travel. Valeriana also has, when it goes to fruit, which is the seed, it gets a pappus-like, and that's in Asteraceae it's called pappus, and those are modified sepals.
Are you saying that the sepals in the Asteraceae are reduced to mere fuzz?
I am reduced to mere fuzz. Can you believe it? They're not green. The sepals aren't green. Or they could be, but no, they're not green. They're reduced to mere fuzz, excuse me. And then, so the Valeriana has green sepals, but as it matures, it becomes pappus-like. And you can see that in the line drawing there on the left. You see the seeds brown there next to the number 5. And that's the sepals, is the hairs there that are pappus-like, similar to like what you would see in a dandelion.
Yeah, well, you know, Stephen, my son now has 2 children.
I know Grandpa Howie.
Yeah, I become the grandpappus.
That's nice. With the joys of life.
The joys of life. Let's get to the root of the issue, Stephen.
Yeah, let's just mention the roots. I'll go back one slide again, just because the roots are the part that we use as a supplement, or we use in our, it's the medicinal part. And the roots are a rhizome. So it's an underground stem, and that's kind of the darker part you're seeing in the photo here. And then the lighter part are actually the true roots, and that's the actual root. And so when you're actually, getting valerian extract or valerian, it's valerian rhizome, which consists of the underground stem and the roots itself. Oh, I did want to mention that valer means to be strong or healthy. Maybe it's similar to valor. There we go.
Whoa, Stephen.
Whoa.
That's what you look like.
Yeah, I don't look like a valerian root.
Well, so we should talk a little bit about valerian. We're here, but certainly we keep talking about that's Valerian I Smell. What's that about? Some people who don't know anything about this herb are wondering what's it about. Well, if you go to the store and buy dried valerian, and you bring it home and you open it up, it smells kind of funny, like kind of
Dirty socks, some people might say, or
stale, kind of like urine maybe, or something.
Yeah. A funk.
What's that?
A funk.
It smells like a funk.
Yeah.
Of course, people do like strong smells. So there's going to be many of you who say, "Oh, I love that smell. That's really good." But the majority of people do not like that smell. That smells kind of funny. That's why you probably want to put it in a jar. And that smell is from the valeric acid. That's the valeric acid smell. And I did want to say something about the dirty socks. The dirty sock smell does come from Michael Moore, the herbalist. And as with many people who teach, so sometimes the students don't write down exactly the right thing, but you will occasionally hear that dirty socks smell because of valeric acid, and it's technically possible that if you made a tea of dirty socks that you would get a calming tea. I disagree with that rumor. We need to stop that rumor right now, because man, that dirty sock tea does not work, let me tell you. So but then we go out and dig valerian up and we get the fresh roots, and it doesn't smell like that at all. And many years ago, I read that valerian was, made this highly prized perfume in some other country. And I'm like, man, that country must have a different cultural idea of what smells good, because my valerian smells really funky. And when we started playing with fresh roots, we found out that that wasn't the case at all. Fresh roots have a completely different smell. Oh, that's right. It's the nice smell that's valeric acid. And the funky smell is isovaleric acid that happens when it dries.
The chemistry kind of changes a bit as it dries.
Yeah, it changes the chemistry and the smell changes. And the fresh root has a very musky, a pleasant, musky, earthy odor that's quite attractive.
I quite enjoy it. It's one of my favorite smells, fresh valerian root. Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
In fact, some like spikenard, not the one that grows in the United States, but in Asia, is closely related to valerian, different genus, but that has a nice musky aroma. And there is a valerian essential oil is also a thing, and that's made from the fresh roots. It's distilled.
Yeah. One day, Stephen gave me a bottle of like fresh valerian perfume essential oil from someplace. That smelled really good. I wish you could smell it. I got some here. Here, take a smell of this. Oh man, isn't that great? Isn't it?
We haven't implemented that technology yet, Howie. Next year, maybe.
Oh, really?
We're making a lot of progress on these Zoom kind of meetings now, so you never know.
Yeah.
The little boxes.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've been worried about, Stephen, is that we may not be able to do these Zoom meetings here in a little bit because these little boxes, I hear there's going to be a shortage of these boxes because they're all off the coast in a boat outside LA.
There definitely has been supply chain disruption, we might say.
So the fresh valerian smells good. It has a very nice musky odor, and it's very different. The overall chemistry and usage of the plants are the same, whether they're fresh or dried. But if you're a valerian snob and you're into the different fine details of the valerian, then you will be able to notice differences between fresh and dried.
Maybe we could talk about a little bit where valerian grows here in Oregon.
That's a good idea. In Oregon, well, we have a number of different species of valerian, but probably the most common one is the Valeriana sitchensis. Valeriana sitchensis. It's such an interesting plant, and it's here at Columbines. We'll look at it throughout the year, from the time it comes out from the snow to the time it dies back. It's one of those plants that we watch. And what's really interesting about it is that it is such an important part of the ecosystem, and it's such a valuable plant in relationship to more than just what a human can use it for, or even more than just what it does in the soil, because the Valeriana sitchensis grows in middle elevation meadows and wet spots. It grows in wet spots, and it comes back after fires. It comes back after disturbance in these meadows, and
seems to thrive on that disturbance, Howie.
It thrives. It's the pioneer plant.
Pioneer plant.
Yeah, it's one that comes in early, and it stays a long time too. After a fire in these wetter spots, the valerian comes in first, and with those thread-like roots, I wouldn't say thread-like, with those
fibrous
squiggly roots, and it has such root mass. It holds the soil right in, and the first few years it's going to be a very visible plant, and after a while other plants will start, after a decade or so, other plants start coming in and covering it up. But even if it turns to huckleberries, you'll often find the valerian still there growing underneath it, but it's most visible just after the fire. So that alone, as a pioneer plant after disturbance, holding the soil down, that is already a tremendous useful plant for the ecosystem. But besides that, it's just so interesting the way that the different animals interact. It's a wonderful forage for the deer and the elk up here in the Cascades. And they'll come and they'll eat the flowers and they'll eat the leaves, which invigorates the plant.
Mm-hmm. Actually, Howie, I was reading in Greaves' Modern Herbal the other day, and it said
that's a really good book.
Harvesting, yeah, it's a very good book. Harvesting the tops of the flowers during flowering will promote energy into the roots and make it a stronger plant.
Yes. Yeah. And so when we find this, we have a plant that evolved with being eaten, and then we have the animals that evolved eating this plant And so the more that the deer and elk eat the valerian, the thicker the valerian grows and the more food there is. This type of interaction is quite interesting. And then we have the gophers in the mountains, in those areas. The gophers in those areas they're living underground, and they're coming up and they're digging holes, and they're making these mounds of sifted dirt that look just like someone had a shovel or something and sifted some dirt, and they can get quite large. And this sifted dirt that's there, which is just loose dirt, is perfect growing environment for valerian that grows in there. Sometimes there's valerian pieces of roots already in there. So a lot of times you go to a pristine valerian stand at certain times of years up in the mountains, and you might think it was harvested already because of all these like mounds of dirt.
So yeah, Howie, that's really interesting, because like when I see the valerian, it seems to like form these mats. It's like they're clonal. It's like a colony, and they mainly reproduce by the rhizome spreading. So they'll send out these underground stems, and you have this colony. Sometimes it's like this one big patch that's really just one plant, or a couple plants, just a few plants, and they really seem to reproduce, probably because they needed to evolve by being browsed. They've learned how to adapt by spreading their rhizomes rather than reproducing by seed. Although they do both. But when you see a thriving Valeriana stand, there's some blooming here and there, sometimes a lot, but there's a lot more if you start getting on the ground and looking at the basal leaves.
Oh yes, absolutely. After disturbance, they can become the dominant plant for even multiple acres if the system is right.
I remember many days with you late in the summer, early spring, late in the summer, early fall, when it's fall up in the mountains at like 7,000 feet, or between 5,000 and 7,000 feet, and it's a hot day. It's like 101 degrees up there, it feels like, and you're just walking around, and all you smell is valerian everywhere you walk. Just the aromatics, just as you walk around, the strong aromatic smell.
Yeah, at least I hope that was Valerian I smelled. If you close your eyes and imagine for a moment, and it's completely black, and then it starts to get a little bit lighter, it's like sunrise or something, and you feel like it's a little foggy, and there's like cobblestone under your feet, and you're walking and it gets brighter, and you find yourself in some like old European town, and you see this man with a flute walking through the town with all these animals following him, and you realize that it's the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and that you're there in Hamelin back in the day. It has been suggested that the Pied Piper secreted valerian roots on his person to attract those animals, those bats and animals that would follow him around. And indeed, cats do like the smell of valerian. And we've had students who will bring home like the valerian leaves and their cats will like it, like it's catnip or something. But we also hear that people bring home their bag of valerian leaves and their cats just walk away a little bit and sit down, face it with their back facing the owner, and just ignore it completely and could care less. But that's until the owner leaves and no one's around, and then the cat loves it. So, but that's just cats. The thing is that there's more to it in the wild when we have our bobcats and even our cougars who love the scent of valerian. So you got the deer and elk hanging out in the valerian stands, wanting to eat this as food. And then at certain times of the year, the deer and elk get all huffy and they start butting each other's heads. They start digging in the soil. They'll rip up the valerian some and disturb it to make like a wet spot that they can roll in the mud.
They get in a rut.
They get into a rut, kind of like I do sometimes.
Yeah,
and day after day doing the same thing. Now, this rut you might think is a horrible disturbance. If a human did it, look, you've denuded the area, all the plants are gone. But the place where they rolled over, that fills in with valerian because the valerian likes that disturbance. Well, while this is going on and making even more smell, you have the cats that like to eat the deer and elk that come on down that live nearby. They also like the smell of valerian. And we've seen signs over the years of the large cats coming and literally digging up the valerian themselves. So this is quite interesting.
Then Howie, the circle of life continues on and on.
Oh, I know. It's just amazing. It's such an important stage of the meadow that the animals and the interaction of the animals will keep this meadow at the valerian stage between the animals digging it up and
they're almost managing the area to keep it a valerian spot.
Yes, yes.
So I hope we gave you a little bit of color there so you can imagine where the valerian's growing, since we can't be in the Oregon Cascades today.
No, but there's other species of valerian growing in Oregon that range from just by the riverside to we got that Valeriana Officinalis that's growing primarily on steep, wet cliffs that are under a lot of erosion, where the soil falls away, and that's where the valerian comes in right away.
Don't want to harvest there.
No, those areas are not off limits to harvesting because they're so fragile. Some of those places you don't even want to go up and look at the valerian. You just look at it down at the bottom where it fell off, but it comes in and holds those areas. And so, yeah, valerian is quite.
And you also have the Valeriana Officinalis.
Oh,
that's primarily on the species we sell here at Mountain Rose, grown up in Washington State, and that's a tall plant and quite as useful as the native Oregonian valerians. Yeah, I remember because we used to sometimes we bring the valerian home to finish processing, with the hose. Usually we go right by the river, spend all day with our vegetable brushes, cleaning out those rhizomes. It's almost like separating like tangled hair, making sure there's no other plants in there or rocks or other plants that might be poisonous. But so we get tired and come home and do it with a hose. And then if it wasn't attached to a leaf, we would throw it away, we'd throw it in our compost or we'd plant it because you need leaves for 100% identification because there are other plants that look like valerian. But one time we threw a little bit of valerian rhizome, a little piece of valerian rhizome just in the compost. Not even the compost that like the good compost for your food. Like this was like the blackberry wood pile. The following year, blooming valerian just growing out of the secondary compost. I mean, that's just a symbol of its resiliency. Valerian's a very hardy plant that can handle disturbance and grows very, very easily, actually.
Those are the types of skills that we can then apply to our own lives to increase our personal resilience to these changing times.
Absolutely, Howie. Well, Howie, should we talk about how valerian's used?
Valerian is a nervine, something that affects the nervous system, depending on how you want to define it. It's a calming herb. There's a lot of calming herbs that are all used essentially the same.
Valerian, like in any calming herb or nervine, has effects on the physical level and the mental level, and the mental or emotional level.
That's right. Like many of the calming herbs, I would agree. So maybe we should start with the mental emotional level first.
That sounds good, Howie. That calming herbs, nervines can be very popular because we're, today's world, there's all this emotional component, and we're all working through our stuff.
Yeah. Well, speak for yourself. Overexcitement. Valerian's good for overexcitement.
It's also really good for frustration, Howie. Frustration.
Circular thoughts that go round and round in your head that you keep coming back to again and again. That one thought that you keep thinking about, you start thinking about something else, but you come right back to the circular thoughts that go round and round in your head that you come back to again and again. I might consider valerian for that.
Yeah, maybe also grief. When you're going through a grieving process, you're not going to use valerian by itself. There's lots of other things you need to work through when you're grieving, but it can be a part of a comprehensive program when you're working through grief.
Yes. Well, good grief. You want to work through it. When you look at a calming herb, you're looking at that slowing down the physical effects of the grief. So you're taking the calming herb so you can sleep, so that you can eat, so that you can do the things that you need to do to work through the grief, and have the strong emotions not take such a physical toll on your body at that time. Oh, yes. How about the holidays?
The holidays.
Holidays.
Oh, I know. When I used to teach at Columbines 20 years ago, I'd go back home for Christmas, go to the motherland, Philadelphia. My mom would be like, when are you going to get a real job, Stephen? She didn't really say that, actually. But, we had those, you always have those conversations around the dinner table during the holidays. You can slip in a little, valerian leaves are edible.
Oh, yeah. They're actually.
I know it's the wrong time of year, but if you slipped in a few valerian leaves, it's much milder than the root, but has a slightly calming effect. Some people just think it's that fancy lettuce that I like to go buy at the health food store. Mom's like, you got that fancy lettuce, just put that in there. But yeah, the holidays.
Well, Stephen, the valerian leaves are quite mild for a wild food. And if you were going to not look at its medicinal effect, I would call it a choice edible for salads. Except if you do put it in your salad, you are going to take the edge off everyone at the holiday table, and it's going to come down a little bit. And maybe your uncle won't yell at your sister about when they're going to get married quite as much. But still, we here at Columbines, and I'm sure at Mountain Rose Herbs, do not recommend you changing people's consciousness or slipping herbs into without their permission.
I agree, Howie, because you will get what Howie's saying, you will get a physiological effect. It might be subtle with the valerian leaves, but you got to be responsible.
Yes. Well, that's why I don't really consider it edible. I mean, it's edible because you could eat a leaf and that'd be fine. But if you try to use it as food, if you made pasta out of it, everybody falls asleep.
It's not really food.
Yes.
How about sadness, Howie?
That's right.
Valerian for sadness.
Yeah, valerian is one of the things you would do for sadness. Yes. Or anger. Anger. The only problem with anger is that if someone is really angry and you say, here, take some of this valerian, they're going to say, I'm not going to take any of that herb you're giving me. I'm angry. But if you could give somebody some valerian while they were angry, that would calm them down. They might still be angry for that reason, but they won't be yelling and they won't be shaking and they won't have the adrenaline. It doesn't take away your problems. The problems will still be there. It's just how you look at the problem.
It turns down the volume a bit. Usually the person will say, that herb just tasted bitter and didn't even work, but they're all more relaxed and it's not as elevated.
Yes, this person, I remember, they came up to me, they were sitting there and they were all freaked out. They were like this, they were, oh, that person, oh, this is horrible. And they were really losing it. And I gave them some valerian skullcap and they tasted it and they went, oh, it tastes so bad. Oh, God, that person, blah, blah. And they started to relax a little bit and then they started to take a breath and then they started to get really mad. And they're sort of like, oh, that person causes me so many problems. And I hated that herb you gave me. It tasted so bad. I'm never going to do that again. And it didn't even work.
I got some more things on my list. How about the blues?
The blues. Or melancholy. But yeah. I don't usually take calming herbs for melancholy because I consider melancholy to be bittersweet. And so it's this kind of like sad emotion that's a little bit sweet, so I'll enjoy it. But if melancholy bothers you, valerian might be the herb.
We talked about irritability. Could be useful for irritability.
Well, sometimes it's just we get so busy, and I'm exploring the term multitasking in my life. My multitasking yoga. And I have these frenzied days where I'm running around because the day is so frenzied. I mean, sometimes I'm running around in a frenzied daze. I'm just dazed and frenzied and don't know what to do. Either of those, a calming herb like valerian may be of useful.
Sometimes it might be useful for obsession. Sometimes all day at work, I'm just thinking about going home and making my model airplanes because I want to get that model airplane made just right and, make it look just perfect. And then I keep coming back to these circular thoughts that I keep coming back to again and again.
I know about that. Circular thoughts that go round and round in your head that you keep coming back to. That's oh man.
How about fear? You're fearful of something, especially for me, like when you have to do these like lectures and get in front of like, sometimes I have to go do a speech or a talk and there's like hundreds of people in the room. Maybe that's not fear, but it's, you got the butterflies, a little nervous. Valerian can be really useful for that, a little bit.
Yeah,
not like a full dose, like you take like a dropper or a half dropper full of some extract and just kind of takes the edge off.
Well, that's the issue with the dosages of these calming herbs. In general, you're not taking huge amounts that make you drowsy. You're taking just enough that it stops you from the anxiety, the fear, the circular thoughts, the physical tightness that's going on. So you take the Valerian and then it doesn't do anything. And then 45 minutes later, you start thinking about that circular thought again. You're like, oh, wait a second. I haven't thought about it for 45 minutes. That's the proper dosage. The one where you don't really feel anything, but you're no longer experiencing these strong emotions.
How about those vague feelings of uselessness?
Oh, man. Yeah.
I know some days I'd be teaching with you, and once you start talking, 5 hours later, you just get those vague feelings of uselessness sometimes. How about headaches? I use Valerian for insomnia. Sometimes I can't sleep. I might up the dose a little bit then. So I'm trying to get some sleep. I can't sleep because I got the circular thoughts that I keep coming back to again and again.
I know. Well, the thing is with these mental emotional issues, we could keep going on and on listing all these different things that maybe you could use it for. But I do want to remind people that you can use it for the physical aspect, which is muscle tightness. So we're talking about like cramps.
Yeah, cramps, spasms. Charlie, like sometimes you get what they call Charlie horse.
Yeah, Charlie horses in my leg. Sometimes in the morning I get that foot cramp.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get this like spasm. I'm coughing, and there's nothing coming up. And at this point, I don't even need to cough anymore, but I just can't stop because it's like this spasm where I'm just can't stop coughing. That's good for that.
Yep. Just your general tight, sore muscles. You get overexertion or did a long hike and your muscles, it's the springtime. Yeah. I think I always got an eye twitch. That might be helpful. There might be other reasons why I have an eye twitch, but if it's just maybe sometimes people get stressed out, they get a little eye twitch, or you could use Valerian for that.
Sometimes for strains and sprains, repetitive motion issues, Valerian and other calming herbs will relax those tight muscles, will release pressure from the tendons. A lot of times with these particular problems after the injury, the muscles tighten up and then you become prone to re-injury and increased pain. And a calming herb will help relax that.
Well, you mentioned you mentioned bronchial spasms when you're coughing and you're not even having productive coughs anymore. But what about diaphragmatic spasms? Hiccups. You might use some Valerian. These kind of acute situations, kind of like Band-Aid medicine, Band-Aid herbs, uses, Band-Aid uses. You might want to take the Valerian, hold it under your tongue so you maybe absorb it a little quicker, but can be useful for the hiccups possibly. Well, that was a really nice kind of just like overview about calming herbs in general. What we were describing there was, Valerian specific, but also just any calming nervine herb. We were talking like passion flower, skullcap, even chamomile. Those are kind of just general nervine uses for the mental, emotional side and the physical side. But let's get into some Valerian specifics, Howie.
Valerian specifics. One of the things about Valerian is that it's a pretty strong and sure calming herb. And for some people, it's a little too strong. I have noticed that some people will put them to sleep. It's definitely a full strength calming herb. And it doesn't work for all people. For we look at a couple different reasons. One is, well, it's quite acrid. It's very acidic as part of its main ingredients is
particularly the roots.
Yes, we're talking about the roots.
Yeah.
And so for some people in tincture form, the acidity is just too much for their digestive system. And so for people who have pre-ulcerous conditions and heartburn, those types of issues, esophageal reflux, the valerian could upset their stomach and make it too acidic. And that's very, very possible, in which case valerian wouldn't be for you. However, conversely, some people have GI tracts that are a little deficient, not enough juices, and that little bit of acidity can be of great value. So this is things to consider with any particular herb that you're using. But many of the herbs that we take that are calming herbs or not calming herbs are quite mild in their GI tract effects. Whereas valerian seems to be a little ragged on that side. It is quite acidic.
Yeah, I've noticed that some people prone to heartburn, it could kick it in.
You might want to do it with food in that instance.
Yeah, in that case, yeah.
Yeah, and be just fine. And valerian has been used for many, many years and is quite a well researched herb.
At one time, it was in the, might still be, but it was in the United States Pharmacopoeia. It was an accepted medicine at one time.
Oh yeah, so accepted that when I was when Columbines School of Botanical Studies was Columbines and Wizardry Herb, and we had a little lab off of by the Wow Hall in Eugene. During that time in the 80s, you could still go to the pharmacy and buy 16-ounce bottles of Valeriana tincture. Lilly, I think it was Eli Lilly's company that was making valerian right up until the 80s, valerian tincture. No, valerian can be quite stimulating too. Some people, when they take valerian, it doesn't calm them down. It wakes them up and makes their heart beat and stimulates them. And this can be a real danger.
It could increase your blood pressure a bit at first.
Yeah, that's true. Well, actually, to a lot of people, when you first take the valerian, it's stimulating. And then shortly thereafter, the calming effects kick in. But for some people, it's stimulating, and then it continues to be stimulating. And this is actually kind of dangerous, because if you're taking a calming herb to relax at that time, if you take something that stimulates you, it could make your emotional, physical issues worse. And so that can be a real problem. And for some people, taking a standard dose of valerian might keep you awake for a day. It might be like taking a strong stimulant and cause all kinds of problems. This was well recognized. This is very well recognized as happening, and you often hear that some people have a allergic reaction to valerian, and the original intent with that was this essentially opposite reaction that people would get. And as I said, it was very well known. Many herbalists have experienced this doing it. We've given out thousands and thousands of dosages of valerian, and it does happen to quite a few people. I'm surprised, but this has changed in recent times, when allergies are a lot more popular than they used to be. And I'm not saying that allergies are not true. Allergies are indeed true. People are allergic to gluten, and people are allergic to environmental stresses. There's no question about that. It's just much more popular to be allergic to things. And what I found in teaching in conferences is that over the last, maybe 5 to 10 years, if I asked the group in a conference, how many of you are allergic to valerian, sometimes it's up to a quarter of the people. And if I ask them, why are they allergic? What effects do you have? They'll say, well, when I take it, my stomach hurts, or when I take it, I have gas, or they'll talk about their GI tract problems that they get from taking the valerian. that's not the allergy that you read about in the books. The quote allergy, and I don't consider an allergy, is this idiosyncratic concept where you take the valerian and it works as a stimulant. And indeed, Stephen, one of the constitutional things about valerian is that it is a circulatory stimulant. It may be a calming herb, but it does make your blood move. It is a warming.
It's warming. It's very warming, and the aromatics. That's a real thing. That's one reason you want to be really careful with those individuals who take that valerian and don't get the calming side of it, because usually you're taking the herbs to relax, maybe, or to calm down. And if you're already in a frenzied state or something, and if you're that type of person who reacts to the valerian, it could be damaging. So you want to give.
Push you over the edge.
This is the first time you're giving someone valerian. I give them a little bit and see how their body reacts.
Yeah, a couple drops.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way. Extract is one way to do it. I love valerian extract or tincture, where you soak it in alcohol, is probably my favorite way. You can make tea from valerian, Howie. But the aromatics, like with most roots, you make a decoction. So that's where you boil the roots. Then you turn the heat off, and you let it sit in the boiling water for like 10 minutes, with the heat on, and then you let it sit for a little bit with the lid on. If you do that with valerian and leave the lid off, the aromatics just go into the air.
I love it. Then I go, I
volatile.
hope that's valerian I smell. The whole house smells like valerian.
You got all these energy, all this valerian aromatics. It smells great. It smells like fresh valerian, but you're losing the medicine, or you're losing the uses there, because that valeric acid is just going in the air instead of in the extraction.
So I guess then I have to go the other way, which is where I just steep it.
Yeah, we just you'll do an infusion, maybe with the lid on. Maybe let some of those, you're going to get those oils collecting on the top of the lid. Let it cool down and let them fall back into the infusion.
Yeah.
You'll actually see the oil floating on top sometimes.
Yeah, that's
the aromatics just in there.
That makes some heavy medicine that way. I know there's a lot of, back in the day, they used to say that allergy was due to some kind of enzyme, and that when you take valerian inside, there's an enzyme in your body that will change the valerian from a stimulating or a stimulating effect to a calming effect, and that some people lack that enzyme, and so it didn't work. It just stayed stimulating. But science changes. Science, the acceptable scientific fact and theory changes all the time. And a lot of the current belief within the herbal community has to do with constitutional effects. That if the person is already a warm person with lots of circulation, that with certain constitutions of people, that the valerian would be contraindicated, that you wouldn't take it, because it would push you in a direction that you're already too much of. With the popularity of herbalism and the increase in high quality local community gardens, people have been growing valerian, which is very good. It really helps with the sustainability and self-reliance. And then remember, you can use the leaves if you have it available. You can dry those leaves and use them much along the same strength of chamomile if you like the flavor and smell of the valerian. The valerian flowers are very pretty, certainly, and I've seen them for sale in our farmers markets at certain times of year as like a cut flower. Now, I think this is really good because, for example, that one day that I took all those valerian flowers that we got from the farmers market and made a bouquet, and I gave them to Stephen, and he put it up there on his countertop, and then all the flowers fall off and went behind the countertop. Do you remember that, Stephen?
Yeah, like a month later, I was like, what's that smell? There's dried valerian flowers and some leaves underneath that fell down underneath the table there, and by the, right that spot you only clean, like, when you do the deep cleaning. And I was like, something smells in here. Oh, it was the valerian bouquet that Howie got me. Got me again.
Yeah,
I was
so
so frustrated
that's what
I had to go get my valerian extract and Take some.
Yeah, well, that's just it. You know, if you like somebody, or I would say if you don't like somebody, but you want them to think you like them, you give them a bouquet of valerian flowers and they really think that you like them. But you know that those flowers are going to dry up and fall behind the counter. And then when you're walking around and you come into their house and there's that funny smell and you look at their cats in their cat box and then you say,
I hope that's Valerian I smell.
I smell.
Well, it's been a real blast, Howie.
Blast.
It's great to see you, and great to be here with the Free Herbalism Project. I really want to thank Mountain Rose again, or I haven't thanked them yet, but thanks for this opportunity to present with you today and present with my dear friend Howie Brounstein. And I guess we'll do it again sometime, Howie. Maybe we'll get back in the woods and
yeah,
go hang out with the plants.
And back together for one more gig, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a few more. We could probably get a few more blooper reels out of something.
Well, once again, I want to thank you for showing up and working with me, and I definitely want to thank Mountain Rose one more time. But most importantly, I want to thank all of you, and even you. I know you didn't turn on your video, but still, I'm thanking all of you because you're the people that make this run. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.